That night, they mocked my cheap shoes at my father's funeral. They laughed until the fleet of gleaming luxury cars arrived, silencing the entire cemetery. Strangers in bespoke suits bowed, calling my name as the sole heir to an empire my family spent a lifetime scorning. The man they called a failure had left me a dangerous choice: forgiveness or the power to ensure they never humiliated us again. My name is Haley Hayes. I am 25 years old, and for the last 3 years, I've been a paralegal at Bright Path Legal Associates, a mid-sized firm in Rockford that smells like stale coffee and old files. Today, I am standing beside the cheapest casket my father's leftover insurance could buy, watching it hang suspended over a dark rectangular hole in the ground. The November air is damp and bites through the thin fabric of my black dress, a dress I bought from a consignment shop 3 years ago for an interview. The flowers, a sparse arrangement of wilting carnations, look as tired as I feel. This is a pauper's farewell. My mother Eileen stands beside me, her shoulder not quite touching mine. Her head is bowed, a gesture that on anyone else might look like grief. To my mother, it is pure submission. Her family, the Hamiltons, are here. They are clustered a few feet away, a tribunal of suburban judgment. They are not here to mourn my father, Charles Hayes. They are here to witness the final pathetic chapter of the man they always called their sister's greatest mistake. The whispers start sharp and clear in the cold. He even managed to die in debt, my Aunt Vivian murmurs, her voice carrying perfectly. She adjusts the fur-trimmed collar of her wool coat, a coat that probably cost more than my father's entire funeral. Eileen is left with nothing, absolutely nothing. My cousins Lucas and Sophia stand beside her. They are reflections of their mother, polished and cruel. I feel Sophia's eyes rake over me, from my serviceable second-hand shoes to my professional but worn dress. "God, that outfit," Sophia whispers to Lucas just loud enough. "Is that from a thrift store? It's heartbreaking." Lucas snorts, a small, ugly sound. He's a junior portfolio manager at some firm downtown, and he carries himself with the unearned confidence of a man who has never faced a single consequence. He looks at me, his gaze full of pity that feels more like acid. "Her dad was a loser and a bankrupt," he says, not even bothering to lower his voice. "Your life is over, Haley." A few of the other Hamilton relatives shift, a titter of uncomfortable laughter passing between them. "Poor girl," someone adds. "Such a shame." I look at my mother, waiting, begging silently for her to say something, to defend the man she was married to for almost 30 years, to protect the daughter who is standing right beside her. Eileen does nothing. She just presses her gloved hands together, her gaze fixed on the muddy ground, as if she can make herself disappear through sheer force of will. She has been practicing this disappearing act my entire life, cowering before her siblings, accepting their scorn as her due, and dragging my father and me down with her. My breath hitches. Humiliation, hot and sharp, cuts through the cold grief. I want to scream at them. I want to tell them that my father was kind, that he was gentle, that he read to me every night and taught me how to ride a bike and told me I was smart. But I say nothing because in their world, kindness doesn't pay the bills. And in this moment, looking at the cheap casket and the sparse crowd, their cruel words feel like the only truth. My father was a failure. I clench my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The pain is a small, sharp anchor in a sea of helpless rage. The cemetery workers, leaning on their shovels a respectful distance away, are waiting. I count the clumps of dirt beside the grave, focusing on the mechanical thud of my heart. 1, 2, 3, just get through this. The priest, a man who clearly never met my father, is wrapping up his generic platitudes about ashes to ashes. He raises his hand for the final blessing, and that's when I hear it. It's not a loud noise, but it's wrong. It's a sound that does not belong in this quiet, run-down cemetery. A low, powerful hum, the sound of expensive, well-tuned engines. I glance toward the rusty wrought iron gate at the entrance. A long matte gray sedan slides into view, its windows tinted so dark they look like polished obsidian. It stops. Behind it, a second car, a black armored SUV, pulls in, and another and another. One by one, a fleet of luxury cars, all in shades of gray and black, rolls through the gates. They are silent, menacing, and utterly out of place. They look like a motorcade for a head of state, not a funeral for a bankrupt paralegal's father. They have private plates, simple silver emblems I don't recognize. The priest stops, his hand frozen midair, his words dying on his lips. My family, the Hamiltons, turn as one. The whispering cuts off instantly. Aunt Vivian's mouth is half open, her expression of smug pity replaced by stunned confusion. Lucas looks like he's just seen his own portfolio crash. Car doors open in perfect, terrifying synchronization. Men in dark, perfectly tailored suits step out. They are tall, imposing, and look nothing like the people of Rockford. They move with a precise, military-style economy. From the lead sedan, a woman emerges. She is perhaps in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wears a black suit that was clearly handmade, its lines sharp enough to cut. Her face is cold but composed, her eyes intelligent and assessing, sweep over our small, pathetic gathering. She scans the mourners, her gaze passing over my mother, over my aunt, over the priest. Then her eyes find me, and they stop. It's a strange, unnerving feeling. It's not a look of pity or curiosity. It's a look of identification, as if I am the only person here she came to see. With measured, silent steps, she walks across the damp grass, her expensive heels not sinking into the mud. The men in the suits fan out, creating a silent perimeter. She stops directly in front of me, ignoring my mother and my stunned relatives. She inclines her head in a small, respectful bow. It's a gesture of deference so profound and so unexpected that I flinch. When she speaks, her voice is low, crisp, and projects effortlessly in the sudden dead silence of the cemetery. "Miss Hayes," she says, "not Haley, Miss Hayes." The board of Armstrong Holdings sends its deepest condolences. Armstrong Holdings. The name means nothing to me. I've worked in legal support for 3 years. I know the major firms, the local corporations. I have never heard of them. I look at my family. They are frozen. Aunt Vivian has gone pale. Lucas and Sophia are staring, their faces a comical mask of disbelief. They have never heard of it either. But the name, the cars, the woman, it all screams of a level of power and wealth that is far beyond their understanding. The woman, Sophia Cole, continues, her gaze fixed on me. "The motorcade is waiting. We request your presence at a meeting regarding the estate of Mr. Charles Hayes." The words hang in the air, echoing, the estate of Mr. Charles Hayes. My father is bankrupt, the failure, the man in the cheap box. My head spins. I am intensely aware of everyone staring, of the silence, of the impossible armored steel reality that has just parked itself in the middle of my grief. My first instinct is to find my mother's eyes. I turn, my mind a blank, reeling mess, searching for an anchor. Mom. Eileen's gaze drops immediately to the casket, to the mud, to anywhere but me. Her face is ashen, but it's not just with grief, it's with something I've seen 1,000 times before: fear. Elaine! Aunt Vivian's shriek cuts through the air, her composure finally breaking. Her panic is a welcome, familiar noise in the sudden alien silence. Who are these people? What is Armstrong? Is it a debt collection agency? They're repossessing the casket, aren't they? Oh my God, the humiliation. Sophia Cole, the woman in the perfect suit, doesn't even turn her head. She addresses the air in Vivian's general direction. Armstrong Holdings does not concern itself with outsiders, she says, her voice like chilled steel. We are here only for Mr. Hayes's heir. Heir? The word feels ridiculous. Heirs inherit things. My father left a second-hand sofa and a pile of medical bills. One of the suited men moves to the lead sedan and opens the rear door. It swings open with a silent, heavy hydraulic grace. He stands at attention, waiting for me. This is insane. This is a mistake. They've confused Charles Hayes with some other more important Charles Hayes. But my mother's words, "He wanted this," are a splinter in my brain. I look at the open grave, the cheap flowers, and the mocking, stunned faces of my family. Lucas is actually holding Sophia's arm as if to keep her from falling. Then I look at the open car door. It's an escape, if only for an hour. I take one step, then another. The grass is soft and uneven under my bad shoes. As I pass Aunt Vivian, she hisses, "Haley, don't be a fool. This is a scam. They're going to harvest your organs." I ignore her. I walk past Sophia Cole and slide into the car. The world disappears. The door closes with a sound like a bank vault ceiling, a soft, pressurized thump. The damp cold of the cemetery vanishes. The smell of wilting carnations and wet earth is replaced by the rich, clean scent of hand-stitched leather and old polished wood. The silence is absolute. I can't hear the priest, the wind, or my aunt's rising hysteria. I am sitting on a seat that feels more like a lounge chair, surrounded by dark wood trim and subtle brushed metal accents. It's the nicest, most expensive place I have ever been in my life. I feel my thrift store dress snag slightly on the perfect leather, and I resist the urge to pull at it. Sophia slides into the seat opposite me, facing backward. Another man in a suit and driver's cap gets in the front. The car pulls forward without a sound, the rest of the motorcade falling into formation around us. The car glides past my family. I see them through the one-way tinted glass, a small, pathetic tableau of confusion and anger. Aunt Vivian is gesticulating wildly at my mother, who has finally sunk to her knees, her shoulders shaking. We turn out of the cemetery gates, and the motion is so smooth it feels like we are floating. "Where are you taking me?" My voice sounds small and rough. "To a secure location to discuss the estate," Sophia says. She is all business, her hands folded in her lap. I think I said this already, but my father didn't have an estate. He had debts. He died in a small rental apartment. He was a good man, but he was not a rich man. Sophia's expression doesn't flicker. Mr. Charles was not poor, Miss Hayes. He was hidden. She reaches down to a slim briefcase by her feet and pulls out a single thin file folder. It's not a legal file like the ones I carry every day. It's bound in something that looks like dark blue leather. She hands it to me. My hands are trembling slightly. I open it. There's only one thing inside, a single 8x10 photograph. It's my father, but it's not. This man is wearing an impeccably tailored dark suit, a crisp white shirt, and a simple, elegant tie. His hair is cut perfectly. He looks healthy, confident, and powerful. He is smiling, not the tired, gentle smile I remember, but a sharp, amused smile, a smile of equals. He is standing in a glass-walled boardroom, a city skyline sprawling out behind him. And next to him, his hand on my father's shoulder, is another man. He is older, with a shock of silver hair, piercing blue eyes, and a face that radiates an intimidating, effortless authority. I look at the small typed caption at the bottom of the photo, Founding Partner, Horizon Trust. I don't understand, I whisper, my fingers tracing the outline of my father's unfamiliar, expensive suit. Who is this? That, Sophia says, is the man as we knew him, a founding partner of the Horizon Trust. And that is Garrett Armstrong beside him. Garrett Armstrong is the sole owner of Armstrong Holdings. The trust is a separate, more complex entity that Mr. Armstrong and your father built together many years ago. Armstrong Holdings is merely one of the assets it controls. My mind is short-circuiting. It's trying to reconcile two completely different realities. The father who drove a 15-year-old sedan and worried about the electric bill, and the man in this photograph, a founding partner standing next to a billionaire. He requested we keep everything confidential, Sophia continues, her voice monotone as if she's reading a report, especially from you and your mother. It was his directive that you be allowed to grow up without the complications of the trust. He was very specific. You were not to be approached until after his passing. Complications. I feel a surge of anger, hot and bitter, rising in my chest. It wasn't complicated. I was at home watching him count pennies. We were drowning in medical bills when my mother got sick. Where was this trust? Where was this money? My childhood flashes by, but now it's all reframed, twisted. The mysterious business trips he would take. Coming back tired, but with a sealed envelope of cash that a client paid late, just enough to cover the mortgage on our old house. The late-night phone calls in his study where he would speak in low, coded tones I never understood. The way my college tuition was always miraculously paid in full. Right at the deadline from a scholarship fund I could never find any record of online. He wasn't struggling, he was hiding. He was letting us live like that. He was letting his wife be humiliated by her family, letting his daughter wear second-hand shoes to his own funeral. The anger is so potent it makes me dizzy. I feel betrayed. He was protecting you, Sophia says, as if reading my mind. Protecting me from what? From having a decent life, from not being ashamed every single day, from them, Sophia says, and from what this kind of power can do to a person before they are ready for it. Your father had seen it destroy other families. The car is silent for a long time. I just stare at the picture. The man who looks like my father, but isn't. Armstrong Holdings, I say, trying to process. You said you're in logistics and private security, among other things. We are a global private corporation. We have interests in secure logistics, data analysis, high-risk asset protection, and strategic investments. As I said, we have avoided the press for several decades. The car slows and we turn off the main highway. I look up, expecting to be at a downtown office tower. I am wrong. We are in a part of Rockford I have never seen. This isn't just the wealthy part of town. This is old money. the kind that doesn't put its name on street signs. We drive through a neighborhood of sprawling historic homes, each one set back hundreds of feet from the road, hidden behind acres of ancient trees. The motorcade turns onto a private drive, marked only by two simple stone pillars. We drive for at least another minute, the woods thick on either side, until we round a bend. The woods open up, and I see it. It's not a house, it's an estate, a massive Gothic-style mansion of gray stone covered in ivy, with turrets and chimneys and dozens of windows that glitter in the weak afternoon light. It looks like something out of a movie, a place of immense quiet and slightly terrifying power. The cars glide to a stop on a gravel drive in front of a heavy carved wooden door. I look at the mansion, then back down at the photograph in my lap. I realize with a cold, sinking feeling that my father didn't just belong to this world. He helped build it, and all my life he had locked me out, leaving me on the other side of the gate with the discount racks and the unpaid bills. The door opened into silence. Sophia led me into a great hall that was more museum than entrance. The floors were slabs of dark polished stone that reflected the cold light from a ceiling 2, perhaps 3 stories above us. There were no family portraits, no clutter of a life lived. Instead, the walls were hung with massive abstract paintings, bold slashes of color that felt more like strategic assets than art. Stone pedestals held bronze sculptures that looked ancient and severe. The air itself was still, cool, and smelled faintly of old wood and ozone. It was the quietest, wealthiest room I have ever entered, and it was profoundly cold. As we walked, my sensible heels made sharp, lonely clicks on the stone. Sophia guided me past a sweeping, unsupported staircase toward a darker wing of the house. Here, built into the wall, was a series of tall, glass-fronted cabinets lit from within like shrines. I stopped breathing. It was him. It was my father, but it was a man I had never known. In the first cabinet, a framed photograph of a young man, barely 20, in a crisp military uniform I didn't recognize. Next to it, a folded flag and a medal in a small box. In the second cabinet, a picture of him, older, in a hard hat, standing on the deck of a massive shipping freighter with a younger Garrett Armstrong, the name Northwind visible on the ship's hull. Another photo showed him shaking hands with stern-looking men in suits, signing a document labeled the Voluta River Accord. Another, him laughing with a group of men in tactical gear somewhere in a desert. This was his life, the real one. While I was at home, learning to read, he was signing accords and standing on freighters. He was very proud of his service, a new voice said. I turned. We had been joined silently. The man from the photograph, Garrett Armstrong, stood in the arched doorway of what looked like a library. He was older now, easily in his 70s, with a full head of thick silver hair. He was dressed in a simple dark cashmere sweater and tailored trousers. Not the power suit I'd expected. He didn't look like a mob boss or a corporate predator. He looked like an old-world statesman, someone who had seen too much. And his eyes, the same sharp, intelligent eyes from the photo, were filled with a deep, weary sadness. Miss Haley, he said, his voice gravelly but gentle. Thank you for coming on such a difficult day. Please. He gestured us into the library. It was vast, lined floor to ceiling with thousands of books. A fire roared in a stone fireplace, large enough to stand inside, but even its heat couldn't touch the chill in the room. Sophia remained standing by the door, a silent sentinel. I sat in a heavy leather chair that faced a massive carved oak desk. I knew your father for 40 years, Garrett said, remaining standing. He was my best friend, my partner, the brother I never had. He paused, his gaze finding the fire. My condolences feel hollow. The world is a lesser place without him. He was a great man. I just nodded, my hands clutching the file with his picture in it. He never told you about our work, Garrett stated. It wasn't a question. He was adamant. Garrett continued. He looked back at me. He was the conscience of our entire operation, the most stubborn, principled man I have ever known. 20 years ago, he rerouted a Northwind humanitarian shipment through a war zone, against the direct orders of our board, to stop a famine. It cost us nearly $50 million and a government contract. It also saved an estimated 10,000 lives. He smiled, a thin, pained expression. He once walked away from a $1 billion mineral rights deal in Southeast Asia because, as he put it, the labor practices were abhorrent. He told the investors to their faces that they were leeches feeding on the desperate. Caleb was our true north. My mind reeled. This was the man Lucas had called a loser and a bankrupt. Garrett moved to his desk. On its polished surface sat another file, this one thick, heavy, and bound in black leather. Embossed in small, simple gold letters on the cover was my full name, Haley E. Hayes. He slid it across the desk toward me. This, he said, is your inheritance. Caleb, as you saw, was the co-founder of the Horizon Trust. This is the truth of what he left you. My hands were shaking. I opened the cover. It wasn't a will. It was a portfolio. Page after page of share certificates, asset lists, and bank summaries. Northwind Freight, Everline Secure Solutions, Riverlight Storage. I saw the names of corporations I'd never heard of, listing me as a majority stakeholder. I saw bank statements from accounts in Switzerland, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands with balances that my mind refused to process. The numbers were astronomical. Property deeds for commercial buildings in New York, apartments in London, and a sprawling, undeveloped parcel of land just outside Rockford. It was a fortune. It was an empire. I don't understand, I stammered, looking up from a number with too many zeros. It is not just money, Haley, Garrett said, leaning forward, his hands flat on the desk. Caleb did not trust money. He trusted you. He pointed to a specific, heavily tabbed section in the file. A board of commissioners governs the Horizon Trust. They manage the assets, but your father built a failsafe into the very heart of the charter, a unique position. He called it the ethics chair. He let the words settle. You, Haley Hayes, are his designated successor to that chair. It is a permanent seat on the board, and it comes with one singular absolute power. My eyes scanned the legal text, my paralegal training kicking in, cutting through the shock. I found the clause. A veto, I whispered, reading the word aloud. An absolute veto, Garrett confirmed. You can stop any deal. You can terminate any investment. You can block any partnership at any time for any reason, if you deem it violates the founding philosophy of the trust. What philosophy? Caleb's philosophy, Garrett said simply, that the trust and its assets will never profit from declared wars or civil conflict, that it will not engage in the exploitation of human labor, that it will not endeavor to destroy a community for profit, that its first priority, above all else, is the protection of the vulnerable. He straightened up. He made you the guardian of his soul, Haley. the moral compass for this entire organization. He let the silence stretch, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. However, he continued, the choice is yours. You have the right to refuse the chair. The charter is clear. You can liquidate a specified portion of the assets, a sum that will ensure you and your family live in luxury for a dozen lifetimes. You can take the payout, live a quiet, normal life, and never think of Armstrong or Horizon again. Frankly, several members of our board would much prefer that. He paused, his gaze leveling on mine. Or you accept the seat. You become a full commissioner of the Horizon Trust. And if you choose that, you must learn everything. You must learn what Caleb knew, how the logistics are run, how the security is managed, how the money moves. This is not a charity, Haley. It is a global power, and it has enemies. The image of the cemetery flooded back, the wet dirt, the cheap carnations, the sound of Lucas's snorting laugh. Your life is over, Haley. My mother, working 2 jobs at a diner, left a 20% tip on a small bill even when the service was terrible. She's working, Haley, he'd said, his voice firm. We don't punish people for working hard. I remembered hearing Aunt Vivian once snipe about a neighbor being poor but proud. My father had gotten quiet. Then later he told me, don't ever let anyone tell you pride is a luxury. Self-respect is the only currency that matters. It is worth more than any bank account on earth. He wasn't teaching me to be poor. He was teaching me how to survive being rich. I looked back at Garrett. I cannot make this decision for you, Garrett said, moving toward the door. This is a shock. You need time. It takes 72 hours. Go home. Think about the life you thought you had, and think about the one your father built for you. Sophia, who had been silent as a statue, still watched me. Her face was impossible to read, but her eyes held a spark of certainty, as if she already knew the answer. My gaze fell on a small table near the door. On it sat a single, thick envelope of cream-colored vellum. It was sealed with a simple disc of dark red wax. My father's familiar, strong handwriting was on the front. It said only one word, Haley. Caleb left that for you, Garrett said, noticing my stare. It is to be opened only if you accept the seat on the trust, not before. He nodded to Sophia. Sophia will see you home. The armored sedan dropped me off 2 blocks from my apartment. The driver, following Sophia's orders, had offered to wait, to drive me to a secure hotel, to take me anywhere. I just wanted to go home, though the word felt hollow. I walked the last 2 blocks in the dark. The transition from the silent leather and wood tomb of the car back to the real world was jarring. The air here in my neighborhood smelled like damp pavement and fast food. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up. I could hear the muted sound of a neighbor's television through the thin walls as I climbed the stairs. When I opened the door, the smell of our life, stale coffee, my mother's cheap floral perfume, and the lingering scent of old grief hit me like a physical blow. My mother was sitting in the dark in my father's threadbare armchair. She looked up as I entered, her face a pale, puffy mask in the gloom. Haley, where did they take you? Her voice was strained. Who were those people? The Harringtons have been calling. They want to know what that was about. I couldn't look at her. Not yet. The knowledge that she knew something was a chasm between us. I need to be alone, I said, my voice flat. I walked past her into my father's study, which was just a desk crammed into a corner of the living room. It was piled high with cardboard boxes, his life packed away. I hadn't been able to do it before. Now I had to. I opened the first box. It was full of his clothes, old worn-out polo shirts, the collars frayed. A plaid flannel shirt I'd given him for Christmas 5 years. Ago, the elbows worn thin. It all smelled like him, a faint scent of soap and old paper. In another box, his things, his chipped coffee mug, the one I bought him from a drugstore that said "World's Best Dad." He'd used it every single morning, and his watch, it was a cheap gold-plated timepiece with a cracked crystal. The kind you buy from a revolving glass case at the mall for $30. He had worn it every single day of his life that I could remember. It was a costume, all of it. The cheap car, the threadbare shirts, the chipped mug, the broken watch. It was a lie, a performance of poverty he had maintained for 26 years. I sank onto the floor, the watch cold in my palm. The anger and betrayal I'd felt in the car returned so strong it made me sick. Then my fingers brushed against the envelope in my coat pocket. It felt alien here, its thick cream-colored vellum a stark contrast to the flimsy cardboard boxes. It was heavy, sealed with that ominous red wax, to be opened only if you accept the seat. Garrett's rule. But Garrett wasn't here. And this man, this stranger who had built an empire, while pretending to be a pauper, owed me an explanation. I needed to know who he was before I could decide whether to accept his world. I broke the wax seal with my thumbnail. My hands trembled as I unfolded the heavy pages. It was his handwriting, the strong architectural script I knew from 1,000 birthday cards and notes left on the fridge. My dearest Haley, if you are reading this, then I am gone. Garrett Armstrong has kept his word. You are now standing at the edge of a world I spent your entire life trying to protect you from. You are angry, and you have every right to be. You feel betrayed. Let me, if I can, tell you why. I did not build Horizon for the money, Haley. I built it with Garrett as a shield. We saw a world where good people were crushed by predators, and we wanted to build a fortress to stop them. But I watched the fortress grow. I saw what the power and the money did to the people inside it. I saw it happen to other families. I saw their children raised with everything turn into people with no empathy, no strength, no core. They were hollow, ostentatious, empty shells. I saw your mother's family, Haley. I saw the Hamiltons. My greatest fear, the one that kept me awake more nights than any corporate threat, was that this world would find you, that it would take my daughter, my bright, kind, fierce girl, and turn you into a version of them. I was terrified you would become someone who sneered at a person's shoes or judged a man's worth by his bank account. So I hid. I hid you. I hid your mother, and I hid myself. I tried to build your armor differently, not with money, but with principle. My vision blurred. I remembered suddenly a dozen small forgotten moments. My father at a diner left a 20% tip on a small bill, even when the service was terrible. She's working, Haley, he'd said, his voice firm. We don't punish people for working hard. I remembered hearing Aunt Vivian once snipe about a neighbor being poor but proud. My father had gotten quiet. Then later he told me, "Don't ever let anyone tell you pride is a luxury. Self-respect is the only currency that matters. It is worth more than any bank account on earth." He wasn't teaching me to be poor. He was teaching me how to survive being rich. I read the last page. My father's script was heavier here, the ink pressed deep into the paper. There is one last thing you must know, and it is a hard truth. It will change how you see your mother. Years ago, when you were small, I offered her a different life. Horizon was stable. I offered to move us. I had plans drawn up for a house near the Armstrong estate. I begged her to let me stop this performance. I was tired, Haley. I just wanted to be her husband, not her family's charity case. It was your mother who refused. She was terrified, not of the money, but of her family, of Vivian, of what they would say, that she had married up, that she was putting on airs, that she was abandoning them. She chose to remain in their good graces, to play the role of the poor, pitied sister who had married a failure. She chose their approval over our family's happiness. She chose to let them humiliate me and you as the price of her belonging. I am sorry, my love, for the burden this leaves you. Whatever you choose, the quiet life or the chair, know that I did it all to keep you whole. Yours, Dad. The letter fell from my hand. The anger at my father evaporated, replaced by a cold, hollow clarity. My mother. Haley, her mother asked from the armchair, a small, timid figure in the dark. What is it? I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and pulled on my coat. I didn't say a word. Haley, where are you going? It's late. I slammed the apartment door behind me. I drove my rattling 10-year-old car, the one my father bought me, across town. I didn't go to the Armstrong estate. I went to the Hamilton house. It was in the rich part of Rockford, a sprawling new-build McMansion that, after seeing Garrett's estate, looked like a child's plastic toy. I parked across the street. It was 11 at night, but the lights were on. I could hear them. Through the large front picture window, I could see them gathered in the living room, drinks in hand. I got out of my car and walked onto their perfectly manicured lawn, the grass cold and wet under my cheap shoes. I stood in the shadows, close enough to hear. They weren't grieving, they were laughing. I mean, did you see the cars? Lucas was saying, his voice high and mocking. It was a complete circus act, all for Charles. Tacky, if you ask me. And those men in suits, like something out of a bad movie. And poor Eileen, she must be terrified. Oh, stop, Aunt Vivian said, her voice sharp and shrewd. I saw her lean forward, her eyes gleaming. This is not a tragedy. This is an opportunity, George. You need to find out who this Armstrong group is. Find out if they have a family fund. If that girl Haley actually gets her hands on a single dollar, we need to be the first ones she calls. We are her only family. After all, she will need our guidance. She was plotting to get their hands on the money of the man they had just buried, the man they had called a failure. I turned away. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a confrontation. They didn't understand words like shame or respect. They only understood leverage. They only understood power. I walked back to my car, my footsteps silent on the driveway. I would not fight them with words. I would fight them with the truth. I pulled out the black, heavy card Sophia had given me. I dialed the number. A voice answered on the first ring, crisp and professional. Horizon, how may I direct your call? This is Haley Hayes, I said. I'm coming back to the estate. Tell Mr. Armstrong I'm on my way. The gate swung open before my car even stopped. This time I wasn't a terrified, grieving girl. I wasn't a passenger. Garrett was waiting for me in the library. He was wearing a dark blue dressing gown, a glass of amber liquid on the desk beside him. Sophia stood near the fireplace, as immaculate as she had been that afternoon. They looked as if they had been waiting. I walked straight to the great oak desk. I didn't sit. I placed my father's letter, the one with the broken seal on the polished wood between us. Garrett looked at the letter, then up at my face. He didn't scold me for opening it. He just waited. "My father built this organization," I said. My voice was low and it didn't shake. "He built it as a shield, but he used it as a place to hide. I won't do that." I met his gaze. If my father built something too big to ignore, then I have to learn how to control it. I can't let it or them swallow me. I can't let it be for nothing. I took a deep breath. I will accept the role of commissioner for the Horizon Trust. Garrett Armstrong stared at me for a long, silent moment. The deep sadness in his eyes was replaced by something else, a flicker of my father's own sharp, assessing intelligence. Slowly he stood up. He walked around the desk and extended his hand. "Welcome to the board, Miss Hayes," he said. His handshake was firm, dry, and warm. It was not the grip of a man comforting a grieving child. It was the grip of a partner. Sophia stepped forward, her face unsmiling but intense. She placed a new, even thicker black-bound file on the desk. "Your training program," she said, her voice sharp. "It begins at 6 a.m., 90 days. You need to understand the power you now hold, Miss Hayes, before you use it to destroy yourself or anyone else." The next 90 days were a blur. My life split into two. By day, I was Haley Hayes, paralegal, still logging hours at Bright Path Legal Associates. A ghost haunting my old life. But at 6 a.m. every morning and every evening until long after midnight, I was Sophia Cole's student. I was an apprentice to an empire. I lived in a state of perpetual high-stakes overload. Sophia was a relentless teacher. She didn't just give me files, she drowned me in them. "This is Northwind Freight," she said on a gray Tuesday, not in a boardroom, but on the freezing, wind-whipped deck of a container ship in a private port I never knew existed, just 20 miles outside Rockford. "It is the backbone. We move 3 million tons of cargo a year. We can get anything, from medical supplies to turbine engines, anywhere on Earth in under 48 hours. And we can do it without appearing on a single public manifest. This is leverage." She took me to Everline Secure Solutions. It wasn't a security company, it was a data hub, a vast, dark, circular room like a NASA control center filled with analysts staring at glowing screens. They monitored global weather, political trends, shipping lanes, and stock market fluctuations. "We protect assets," Sophia said, her voice low, as we stood on a glass walkway above the floor. "Data is the most valuable asset. Everline knows when a government is about to destabilize, when a currency is going to crash, or when a CEO is making a fatal mistake. We see the patterns. This is foresight." But the heart of the operation, the place my father had truly built, was in a windowless, soundproofed basement in a nondescript office building downtown, miles from the Armstrong estate. It was called the Horizon Response Unit. It was a quiet office, not a war room. It held a dozen analysts, a mix of former lawyers, journalists, and social workers. Their walls weren't covered in maps, but in faces. This, I learned, was my father's true passion project. The screens here didn't show stock tickers, they showed case files. A family in debt to a loan shark who had persuaded the local police not to intervene. A small inventor being crushed by a corporate giant stealing his patent. A woman in a small town being blackmailed by a local politician. The law is often too slow or too expensive or too corrupt, Sophia explained, her voice neutral. The response unit finds the cases that fall through the cracks, the ones where the scales are hopelessly unbalanced. I watched stunned as I saw the files. Intervention, anonymous legal aid provided. Intervention, debt consolidated and purchased by a third-party shell. Intervention, evidence of blackmail delivered to an independent press outlet. This was my father's secret. He hadn't just been a partner in a logistics empire. He had been building a private shadow justice system. "We don't get paid for this," I said, stating the obvious. "We do not," Sophia confirmed. "This is not a profit center. This is the cost of doing business. Itatawan is the why." My eyes scanned the wall of closed cases, a row of small framed photos of the people they had helped, and my heart stopped. I saw a picture of a smiling, dark-haired woman, a woman I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. "I know her," I whispered. "That's my Aunt Megan, my father's younger sister. She lived in Washington and we'd lost touch after a bad divorce." Sophia pulled the file. It was thin. Megan Hayes Russo, her ex-husband, a high-level financial manager, was attempting to hide assets and frame her for his own fraud. The local courts were compromised. We intervened. Our forensic accountants found the hidden money, and our legal team provided her new counsel with the evidence anonymously. Her husband is now serving 3 to 5 years, and she is, as I understand, running a successful bakery. My father had saved his sister from the other side of the country without her ever knowing. "Your father didn't like to destroy people, Miss Hayes," Sophia said, her eyes meeting mine. "He liked to rebalance the scales. We are not angels. We do not run the world, but we do not work for the bullies." My training wasn't all in the shadows. Sophia began bringing me to the board meetings, not the main Horizon Trust meetings, but the smaller divisional investment committees. This is where I met Carson Doyle. Carson was a commissioner on the trust like my father had been. He was in his late 50s with a handsome patrician face, a full head of silver hair, and the kind of expensive, effortless charm that I'd learned to distrust. He ran the high-risk, high-return investment wing of the portfolio, and he clearly saw me as a mascot or an obstacle. In my first meeting, he presented a pitch for a luxury resort on a small island in the Caribbean. The projections were incredible, a 20% return in the first year alone. "The local government is giving us massive tax breaks," Carson said, smiling at the board. "They are eager to clear out the, shall we say, informal settlements on the beachfront to make way for us. It's a clean win." "Informal settlements," I said, my voice, small but clear, cut through the room. "You mean people's homes?" Carson's smile tightened. "I mean shanties, Miss Hayes. We're replacing them with a state-of-the-art resort that will create hundreds of service jobs." "Jobs serving the people who bulldoze their houses," I countered. I'd read the file. "The charter of my father's philosophy says we don't destroy communities for profit." Carson's charm vanished. His eyes went cold. "This is not a charity, child. This is a business. Your father understood that when it suited him." "Garrett, are we to be lectured by a paralegal?" Garrett Armstrong, who had been sitting silently at the head of the table, looked at me. His face was unreadable. "It is a 10-figure investment, Carson, and Miss Hayes is, by the charter, the ethics chair. She has a right to speak, and a right to veto." A heavy silence fell. This was it, a test. Garrett turned his gaze to me. "Haley, you have heard the pitch. Do we proceed?" I could feel Carson's stare like a drill. I could feel the weight of the money, the billions of dollars pressing on me. I thought of the shanties. I thought of the people being cleared out. "No," I said, "we don't. The project is dead. I veto it." Carson Doyle said nothing. He simply closed his leather-bound folder with a soft, final snap. He looked at me, and his eyes held a new, calculating coldness. He wasn't annoyed. He was assessing a new threat. Sophia met me after the meeting. "You made a powerful enemy today," she said. "I thought that was the point of the job," I said. She almost smiled. "Perhaps, but that was the theory. Now for practice." She drove me, not in the armored sedan, but in a simple, unremarkable car, to a neighborhood not far from my own. We parked in front of a small, struggling laundromat. Its sign faded and cracked, "Alvarez Cleaners." Inside, the air was warm and smelled of soap and hot steam. A small, tired-looking woman, Maria Alvarez, looked up from a folding table, her eyes filled with fear. "Sophia," she said, her voice trembling, "they came again. They said the city is sending the inspector tomorrow. They said I will be shut down." Sophia introduced me as a legal consultant. For the next hour, I listened to Maria's story. She had owned this shop for 30 years. It was her life. 6 months ago, a massive corporate chain, Pure Clean, had made an offer to buy her out. She'd refused. Since then, her life had been a nightmare. Sudden, unexplained supplier issues, vandalism, and now endless harassing inspections from the city, all citing anonymous complaints. Pure Clean's lawyers had just sent a new complex contract, offering to help her with her compliance issues in exchange for selling at a 30% loss. "I will lose my home," Maria whispered, tears welling. "They are monsters. They just lie." I looked at the contract. It was my world. I worked at Bright Path Legal Associates. I knew these tactics. This was a predatory, bad faith negotiation squeeze. "Sophia," I said, turning to her, "I don't need a team. I don't need muscle. I need a phone, a good lawyer, and a line of credit." For the next week, I worked from a back office Sophia rented nearby. I used my legal knowledge from Bright Path, but for the first time, I had the resources of Horizon. We hired the best, most aggressive corporate litigator in the state. We sent a private investigator to track the anonymous complaints and found they all originated from an IP address linked to Pure Clean's regional manager. We commissioned a full structural and compliance audit from the top engineering firm in the city, which found Maria's building to be spotless. Then Horizon, through a shell corporation, offered Maria a zero-interest long-term loan, enough to upgrade her old machines and pay her legal fees. I was the one who made the call to Pure Clean's legal department. I didn't threaten them. I just laid out the facts. I presented our file, which included a new civil suit for tortious interference and a neatly packaged dossier of evidence for the state attorney general's office. I gave them an option: walk away in writing and never contact Maria Alvarez again, or face a lawsuit that would cost them millions in legal fees and expose their predatory practices to the press. They were silent for 24 hours. On Friday, a terrified, apologetic courier delivered a letter to Maria. All offers were rescinded. All complaints were withdrawn. Pure Clean offered its sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding. I was in the shop when Maria read it. She read it 3 times, not understanding. Then she looked at me, her face crumpled, and she began to cry, deep shuddering sobs of pure relief. She grabbed my hands, her own rough from work, and just held them, repeating "thank you" in Spanish and English. I thought of my mother, her hands chapped from working extra shifts at the diner to make extra money. Money that, it turned out, we never even needed. I squeezed Maria's hands. This was it. This was the power. It wasn't the fleet of cars or the bank accounts or the cold boardrooms. It was this, the ability to look at a bully, to look at a predator, and to make them stop. The power to give a good person, a person like Maria, a chance to simply live their life in peace. When I got back in the car, Sophia was waiting. "Good work," she said. "They'll just do it to someone else," I said, feeling the exhaustion hit me. "Yes," Sophia agreed, "but not to her. You rebalanced the scales." As we drove back to the estate in silence, I knew I had crossed a line. I had used the power and I had liked it, and I knew, with a cold certainty, that back in his high-rise office, Carson Doyle was watching. He was done waiting to see what I would do. He was now actively watching for me to fail. My 90-day immersion ended. I was no longer an apprentice, a paralegal playing dress-up in a world of billionaires. I was the ethics chair of the Horizon Trust, and the title no longer felt borrowed. I had moved out of my mother's apartment. I couldn't look at her, not after reading my father's letter. I couldn't listen to her tiptoe around the truth, her quiet apologies for a betrayal she still hadn't admitted. I was now living in a private suite at the Armstrong estate, a move Garrett had insisted on for security and focus. I was in my new study, a room smaller than the main library but still lined with old books, when I summoned Sophia. "The 90 days are over," I said, not looking up from a report on an Everline data sharing agreement. "My training is complete." "It is," Sophia agreed. "Miss Hayes, you have absorbed the material." "Good." I closed the file. "I have a request." "Of course. I want to see every file, every report, every piece of data Horizon has ever collected on the Hamilton family, George, Vivian, Lucas, and Sophia." Sophia's composure, usually as smooth and hard as glass, showed a micro fissure, a slight, almost imperceptible tightening around her eyes. "Miss Hayes, the Trust's resources are extensive, but they are not intended for domestic inquiries." "My father's partner, Garrett Armstrong, was just eulogized as a loser and a bankrupt by this family," I said, my voice cold and even. His appointed heir, me, was mocked at his graveside. "This family has spent 30 years leeching off the emotional, and I suspect financial periphery of a Horizon founder. Their proximity is a liability, their behavior a threat. This is not a domestic inquiry, Sophia. It's a security audit." I had learned the language. Sophia's expression reset to its neutral mask. "I understand. Mr. Armstrong will have to authorize such a request." "I've already spoken to him." I lied, though I knew it was a lie Garrett would retroactively approve. "He agreed he wants a full vulnerability assessment." Sophia nodded, accepting the new reality of my authority. "I will have the files sent to your secure terminal." They arrived an hour later, not as a thick file, but as a slim encrypted drive. The Hamiltons, it seemed, were not major threats, but they were persistent. The drive was surveillance. It was a file full of shields. The first file was on my uncle, George Hamilton, 6 years ago. His small brokerage firm had come under investigation for, as the file put it, minor regulatory indiscretions. He had been sloppy. He was about to be fined, likely disbarred, and publicly humiliated. A quiet note at the bottom of the report, dated 2 days later, read, "Per CH, a third-party legal team has anonymously provided mitigating evidence. The case was settled. No charges filed, all press suppressed. Charles Hayes." My father had saved him. The note attached, a transcript of a call with the legal team, explained why. The press leak would inevitably link back to Mrs. Hayes, and her daughter HH is in her 2nd year of college. We will not allow her to be collateral damage. He hadn't saved George. He had protected me. My hands were shaking as I opened the next files on Lucas and Sophia. Their arrogance was built on sand. Lucas's prestigious first job out of college. It was at a firm that had 6 months prior received a major 8-figure investment from a Horizon Trust shell company. Sophia's first major marketing client, the one that launched her career, a tech startup that my father and Garrett had personally funded. They were not self-made. They were a secret charity project. They had spent their entire adult lives benefiting from the network of the man they called useless, all while never being smart enough to even see the strings. Then I found the last log. It was from a formal Horizon board meeting 4 years ago. My father's voice, transcribed from the minutes, was ice cold. "CH, I want to divest from the Hamilton portfolio, all of it. Pull the funding from the Kensington Finance Group that employs Lucas. Cancel the advisory retainer for George. GA, Charles, this is a financial decision, not a personal one. CH, it just became personal. Vivian was at our house. She told Eileen, in front of Haley, that my daughter was a poor little burden. She said Haley was the reason Eileen was stuck with a failure. I am done, Garrett. I am done shielding them. I am done letting them feed on us. CD, this seems emotional. CH, this is a moral judgment, Carson. GA, don't make a permanent decision from a place of temporary rage, my friend. It's not your way. Let it cool. We will not have you compromise your principles for a moment of anger. We table this. I closed the file. The pain was sharp, a physical ache in my chest, but it was threaded with a profound aching relief. He wasn't passive. He wasn't weak. He heard them. He saw them. He fought for me. In these secret rooms, in this language I never understood. He just chose mercy. Garrett was right. He had let his anger cool. He had continued to protect them, to protect me from their implosion. I sat in the silence of the great empty room. My father had chosen the soft path, the path of the shield, to avoid a direct confrontation. I would not make the same mistake. They needed a lesson, but not the one my father had tried to teach. He had tried to teach them decency, and they had failed the test. I would teach them consequences. My decision was clear, cold, and precise. I would not bankrupt them. I would not destroy their children or their futures. I was not Carson, but I would, with surgical precision, force every adult who had sat at my father's funeral and mocked him to look at their own pathetic, fragile lives in the cold, hard light of day. I would make them face the man they had scorned. I sketched out the plan in my notebook. I would not leak the information. I would not call them or threaten them. I would do it the Horizon way. I would control the entire narrative. I would host an event, a memorial. I called Sophia. We are going to host the inaugural Charles Hayes Memorial Gala right here in Rockford, at the Silver Crest Hall, the most expensive venue in the city. We will announce the formation of the Charles Hayes Fund, a new arm of the trust dedicated to protecting small businesses from predatory practices. Sophia was already ahead of me. A very public, very prestigious event. Exactly, I said, looking at the list of Hamilton vulnerabilities. And we will send a special personal invitation to my father's closest living relatives, the Hamiltons. They will be seated at the head table as our guests of honor. They had laughed at his cheap funeral. Now they were going to be forced to attend his lavish memorial in a room full of people who were about to learn the truth. The invitations were sent by a private courier. They were not cards, they were statements, thick cream-colored cardstock, heavier than any wedding invitation, engraved in a simple, severe script. The Horizon Trust logo, a subtle stylized H that looked more like a line drawing of a balanced scale, was embossed in dark gray at the bottom. The board of the Horizon Trust, the invitation read, requests the honor of your presence at the inaugural Charles Hayes Memorial Gala, announcing the formation of the Charles Hayes Fund for Small Business Advocacy. The location was set, the Silver Crest Hall, the most opulent old money ballroom in Rockford, a place the Hamiltons had spent their lives trying to get invited to, usually without success. The first call came, as expected, from Aunt Vivian. I was in my new office at the estate, a room overlooking a severe but beautiful stone garden. When Sophia patched the call through to my desk, I picked it up. Haley Hayes speaking. Haley, darling. The voice was treacly, a thick, sweet poison I had known my whole life. It was the voice she used on wealthy strangers at cocktail parties. My goodness, we just received the most stunning invitation. The paper. It's just exquisite. We are simply overwhelmed, darling. A gala for your father. I said nothing. I let the silence sit, a cold, hard object between us. We just had no idea, she continued, a slight manic edge entering her voice as the silence stretched. We are so proud of you, Haley, taking this tragedy and turning it into a charity. It's what Charles would have wanted. Of course, he didn't have a head for business, bless his heart, but he was always so charitable, giving away his last dollar. He was, wasn't he? I said, my voice flat. Yes, and darling, I know this must be so overwhelming for you, all this planning. I just wanted to call and offer my help. You know, I know everyone in Rockford. I could help with the guest list. I even know some people at the Rockford Press. I could get a photographer, perhaps a small mention in the society pages. She was offering to use me, to attach her name to Horizon, to leverage my father's memorial as a way to climb back into a social circle that was, I knew from the Lighthouse report, beginning to shut her out. Thank you, Vivian, I said, using her first name. The lack of aunt made her pause. But that won't be necessary. Horizon has its own media and security team. We have everything under control. I just need you to be there, as family. You'll be at the head table. Of course, the head table, she breathed, the sheer relief and social victory in her voice making me nauseous. You are his closest living relatives, aren't you? I said. He wants a full spectrum, I said. We'll see you there. A car will be sent for you. I hung up before she could reply. She was hooked. They were all hooked. They smelled money, prestige, and a lifeline. They would be there, dressed in their absolute best, walking right into the center of the stage I was setting. The next visitor was one I had been dreading, my mother. Sophia announced her arrival with a single discreet knock. Your mother is in the winter salon, Miss Hayes. She seems distressed. I found her pacing the length of the room, a small, anxious figure, dwarfed by the 20-foot ceilings and the cold, priceless art. She was wringing her hands, and when she saw me, she flinched. She was afraid of me. "Haley," she said, her voice a strained whisper. "I got the invitation." "It's a courtesy, Mom. You don't have to come if you don't want to." "Don't have to? Haley, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked, and the old familiar irritation I felt around her was replaced by a surge of real anger. "A gala at the Silver Crest with a fund. This isn't Charles. This is a show. It's God, Haley. You are turning your father's memory into a tool to shame your family." I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound that surprised even me. "Shame them," I said. "They did that themselves, Mom, at his funeral, while you stood there and let them. Or did you forget?" "It's not that simple," she cried, tears welling in her eyes, the tears that used to work on me. "They're my family. I was grieving. What did you want me to do? Make a scene at my husband's grave?" "I wanted you to defend him," I roared, the sound echoing in the massive room. "I wanted you to say stop. I wanted you to tell your sister to shut her mouth. I wanted you, for once in my life, to pick your husband, to pick me over them." "You don't understand," she sobbed, recycling the excuse. "No," I said, stopping in front of her. "You were protecting yourself. You were afraid of the money, but of her family, of Vivian, of what they would say, that you had married up, that you were putting on airs, that you were abandoning them. You chose to remain in their good graces, to play the role of the poor, pitied sister who had married a failure." She had no answer. She just wept, her sobs thin and pathetic. She wasn't an evil woman. She was just a coward. And sometimes a coward is infinitely more cruel. "I'm not going to stop you from coming to the gala, Mom," I said, my voice hardening. "You can come. You can sit at the head table with your sister. But you need to understand the shield is gone. My father isn't here to protect you from them. And I'm not going to either." I drew a line. "From now on, whatever I do, I will own. Whatever you do, you will finally, for the first time in your life, have to bear the consequences. I am done covering for you. I am done being your excuse." I left her crying in the salon. Ellen was sobbing openly now, but she didn't try to stop me. She knew I had done what she never could. I had burned down the rot to save the foundation. I walked out onto the porch and into the gray Pennsylvania afternoon. The cold air hit my face, bracing and real. I touched the velvet box in my pocket. The story didn't belong to Richard anymore. It didn't belong to Caleb's insecurities. It belonged to me. Whether I let Caleb back into the next chapter was a decision for another day. But as I started the engine and watched the farmhouse disappear in my rearview mirror, I knew one thing for certain. I had walked into the fire, and I had walked out carrying the only thing that mattered. That is where this chapter ends. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a roller coaster of emotion, betrayal, and justice, and I hope you felt every twist and turn. Along with Haley, I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a snowy town like Willow Creek or somewhere warm and tropical? Please leave a comment below with your location so we can see how far Haley's story has traveled. And if you enjoyed seeing the truth come out, please make sure to subscribe to Violet Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people. Until next time, stay strong and write your own ending.